music played when there were bad guys before, and music still playing now, where are the bad guys, is a very, very, very powerful emotion for you to tap into as a developer. And since we just talked about how in Resident Evil 4, the music sort of disappears once you've fought and beaten an enemy, we're actually going to touch on a track that does the same thing in Silent Hill 2. It sort of gets rid of that amazing point we were just talking about, but we're going to use this one. The last tracks were ambient. They were just sort of there in the background. These are battle tracks. The next ones we're going to
bust out the drums.
Bust out the scary drums. All right, this first one is called Ashes and Ghosts, and it's from the Silent Hill 2 OST. It sounds a little something like this. Okay, so you've just beaten an enemy to death with a pipe.
And the most classy of all horror weapons.
The most classy of all horror weapons, aside from a baseball bat with a gigantic nail through it. But you've just beaten an enemy that, for all intents and purposes, is just the most terrifying thing on two legs. And this horrible, scary music just sort of stops.
And is that the first time in the game it does that?
What, the music just cuts out completely?
Yeah.
No, the game had, before this point, used silence.
Okay.
In point of fact, several of your trips through the apartment building were completely silent.
Oh, okay.
So you were dealing with A, silence, and B,
hills.
That just noise, which was just the worst. So all of a sudden you have this battle music that kicks up when an enemy's there, and then disappears when he's dead. What have you learned? Like, say you're just a player of the game. What have you learned?
Battle music means scary enemies.
Battle music means scary enemies. This is where the game sort of falls on its face. The game is at its best when you're afraid that the enemies might be around the next corner and that they might get you. But by introducing music that appears when an enemy is around and then disappears once it's gone, it takes away the tension that there might be unseen enemies. And I feel like that betrays the horror that is at the heart of the Silent Hill 2 experience, and really the experience that we want in all horror games.
It's funny because that really contrasts to Resident Evil 4, and it's funny because we can talk a little bit about the games that preceded Resident Evil 4 in the Resident Evil series to mock at this. They were, literally, they were the same as Silent Hill, in the sense that I haven't played them, but I imagine they probably had battle themes that kicked up for certain enemies too.
Sure.
I don't remember the first Resident Evil games well enough to know if that's true. People in the comments, go ahead and tell me if that's true or not. But I imagine it probably was, or at least it probably had battle themes. The difference is, where it would probably fall flat the same way Silent Hill 2 would, Resident Evil 4 does not.
Absolutely.
And if you want to know why, well, we probably should listen to the song first, but I can give a quick overview. The idea is that since Resident Evil 4 focused way more on being action-centric, the action-centric themes really did a lot to boost the tension of that moment.
Exactly, and that's where we start seeing the real differences between Silent Hill 2 as a horror game and Resident Evil 4 as a horror game, because Silent Hill 2 is probably closer to traditional survival horror, where you are constantly watching your health. You're trying to make sure that you...
Tank controls,
trying to make sure that you have enough med kits to survive the next encounter. How many bullets do you have? Is it better to beat this enemy to death with a pipe or quickly dispatch it with your gun? Or even kick it to death while it's lying on the ground? Whereas Resident Evil 4 just throws bullets at you. It throws... You kill a bird and a grenade drops out, for Christ's sake.
Which, was really appropriate for some reason.
I loved it. But the next track is going to do very much the same thing that the one from Silent Hill 2 did.
But listen to how much more hectic and chaotic it is and how much more action-packed it is to match the tension and the pace of the game.
Yeah, this is Ganado 2 from Resident Evil 4.
I feel like a radio host. It's not the same track.
Oh. So what you're saying is that you're just a big, huge pile of shit?
Anyway, this track's fucking awesome.
It's really great.
I love this song so much. First off, the first thing I love is how it opens up. I guess you might not know what I'm talking about, but it opens up with these really, really nice notch filters. Oh my gosh, man, they're just freaking sick. It's the cool white noise that you hear at the beginning of the track.
Was it the high pitched thing?
Yeah,
that was a notch filter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
It's a notch filter over a white noise signal.
Notch. I thought you were saying nosh, like a mosh pit, but it's a notch pit.
It's a mosh signal. Anyway, but yeah, it's fucking cool. See, this is what we were talking about before. This track gets you hyped, man. It gets you ready to just freaking just go in there and kick ass. But at the same time, like you were saying a second ago when we were listening to it off mic, you were saying it's just scary enough to not make you be a jackass.
Yeah. So you are empowered enough that you feel okay quick time kicking enemies in the chest and then knifing them in the face, but you also don't want to run out into the middle of a room to get like mauled by 30 of them.
You know what I think it is? It's an interesting dichotomy of the music empowering you and empowering the enemies also. It's like it's almost like it's a source of energy for both parties.
Just this savage tone that's constantly playing.
Yeah, and it's just like, because like you're running around, they're running around, you're shooting, they're throwing pitchforks, like it's fucking... Okay, I guess actually nobody throws a pitchfork in that game, but that'd be so cool. They should have done that.
Yeah, they should have. Too bad, development times. But again, this is Resident Evil 4's edge over Silent Hill 2, because Silent Hill 2 should have focused on a creeping, scary dread.
And for the most part it does.
But
with its battles, it kind of tries a little harder than it should have.
Exactly.
And I don't think it does that in every instance, to be fair. The songs we chose were probably the heaviest Silent Hill 2 has to offer, I would argue.
There are a couple boss fights where it gets really mechanical sounding.
Oh, yeah?
The first Pyramid Head boss fight in particular, I remember, in addition to him scraping his sword on the ground, it's just like, this sounds like steel tearing and being rent against concrete. And just this... awful noise, and it totally that is fine for me because that's a boss encounter. Yeah. And once you kill the boss, you kind of need a signal that he's gone. There's no tension there aside from the tension of you survive until the encounter's done.
Also, and on top of that, the two main characters are so different in these games.
Oh man, they have the same haircut though. They both have a blonde fringe.
Oh, that's really weird. I wonder what's the deal with that. They don't even look Japanese.
Well, no horror game protagonists look Japanese because they're all set in America.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It is, isn't it? Damn. Well,
Raccoon City is
Resident Evil 4 is set in Spain.
That's true, but Leon's from New York.
But, it's funny because, like, despite the fact that they both look kind of similar, although I guess I would argue James is a little chubbier, man, like, Leon is this trained dude who fucks people up. And James is this normal dude who's psychotic and has his wife in the backseat of his car.
Yep.
But like...
Oh, spoilers for Silent Hill 2, by the way.
And they never explicitly say it. It's a theory.
It's literally how one of the endings happens.
Oh, is it?
Yes!
Oh, I didn't see that one. Fuck. But yeah, oh my god. Like, they're both great games. And it's interesting to compare the two, musically speaking. Because obviously comparing the two games is a little bit odd on its own.
Yeah.
But, when you look at it from an audio perspective... There's so much intrigue going on. The horror genre can do so much without having to really do much at all.
I agree.
And, like, that's cool. And it's also fun for audio producers because, especially coming, like, someone from my position where if I were producing a game that was a horror game, it'd be so fun to be able to say, I can look at this atmosphere and I want to just rev it up. I want to just make it super terrifying. And, I mean, obviously... most people would probably hear that and say, well, yeah, you do that for every, environment. You always had it. But, not really. It's a different type of, feel. Like, because, a lot of things that are horrific are unidentifiable.
Exactly.
And so if you're taking that into consideration, you have to make the music, like, literally give you this sense of, what the hell is that shit?
Exactly. If I was in charge of the sound design, and that would be a bad decision because I'm not a sound guy, but if I was in charge of the sound design, I would decouple enemy encounters with the music.
I think that'd be interesting. It depends on the game.
It depends on the game. With
Resident Evil 4, it works way better because the action is so much more impacting.
And since you are capable of taking these encounters on head on, it makes sense to have a tone that sort of signifies that, hey, we're done with the fight so that you can sort of scrounge the area.
Well, come to think of it, if I remember from Resident Evil 4, like, the game doesn't even really have as much of the creepy ambient tracks as Silent Hill 2 has.
No, which is why it's such a damn shame that Silent Hill 2 didn't play up the creepy, why it did have a tone for enemy ending. Because imagine if that creepy breathing hallway thing lasted for the entire area. And was in no way, shape, or form connected to enemy appearances.
Yeah, you'd be left with the sense of what Silent Hill 2 generally leaves you with, which is the sense of mysterious intrigue that, like, frightens you and makes you not want to continue.
Absolutely.
And it's as simple as that. Both really, really good games, all really good songs. they're not in a fight with each other. It's just fun to see the analysis to compare the two.
Even though I've tried to make them into a fight against each other.
Well, hey, you got to get a little bit of competitive in there.
You know what? All right, let's do that. Final score on Atmosphere, Silent Hill 2. On battle themes, it's got to go Resident Evil 4.
No problem. I agree with that.
All right. We're shaking hands, everybody.
Oh, yes. This is weird. Why are we doing this? Anyway, this has been a Nerd Noob Listens. Thanks a lot for listening to us, and hopefully we'll be making another one of these. Tell us what you guys think. We'll try and tighten it up as we go.